we've been saying for a long time, nobody believes in anything anymore.
This is true. This is true. Everybody wants to take every statement and just twist it in the most perverse way that they can.
Nothing is true under the Trump regime. They can say one thing one day, say another thing another day, and somehow they're both true, even though they're contradictory.
Yeah, you can have a press secretary say one thing, you can have the NatSec secretary say another, and you can have the defense say one thing, and then the president goes and says a fourth thing.
And it just fundamentally doesn't matter. And we had another one of those moments this week.
Yeah.
Because the big controversy was around Jim Comey, I think, the former FBI director, posting 8647, which a bunch of people interpreted as, let's do something bad to the president.
The most malicious framing that you could possibly take that in.
Yeah, so a bunch of people on the right wing are like, Jim Comey should be behind bars, this should be illegal, he's calling for political violence, which we condemn, of course.
Always.
Obviously, that's not what that means.
No.
And there's always a tweet, you know what I mean?
Yep.
There was Jack Posobiec was like on Twitter yelling about how Jim Comey needs to be locked up. A couple of years ago, he said 8646.
It's always the same thing. Nobody stands on principles. Nobody stands on business. Nobody believes in a single goddamn thing, dude. It's so frustrating. You can't contend with it.
Yeah.
Like, you fundamentally can't, because they don't stand for anything.
Yeah, it's just like it doesn't matter. Nothing is real.
And you really expect me to believe that the former FBI director got out and issued a call to violence in the highest degree for the current president?
Yeah.
FBI director under Biden? You really, those guys couldn't stand for anything.
It's like, first of all, free speech.
Yes.
Jim Comey has no position of power. He is just a citizen.
Private citizen.
You can say literally whatever you want. But also, they could find him. Like, he's still sort of like a semi-public figure. They probably know where he lives. Like, it's really not that deep. And if you think Jim Comey stands as like a threat to Donald Trump,
I don't know what to tell you.
It's just not true.
You're fundamentally just like lost.
The only people that have tried to do physical and political violence to Trump have been other Republicans.
Now, if Kash Patel tweeted 8647, then maybe I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know, man.
Man, did you see the clip? Speaking of like culture war shit that nobody actually cares about, but they pretend to care about. I think they were asked about like the Epstein files or whatever, and they said they're just not going to release them.
Really, straight up.
Just straight up.
Bondi say just straight up like, you guys got what you got.
Yeah, just like straight up, it's not happening. Like nothing is real. Nobody actually cares about anything.
They can just say whatever they want and people will eat it up.
Yeah, and again, I wonder why they would not want to release these sets of documents.
Yeah, and it's just like, there's something, I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but there's really something about like conservatives freaking out about the 8647 thing, interpreting it in the most malicious way they possibly could interpret it. When during the Biden administration, they were doing all of these like, oh, I'm going to say this without actually saying it. All of these let's go Brandon like type euphemisms and whatnot. Like, they're getting away with something. I
mean, people would like get decals on their truck that showed like Biden tied up in the backseat. You know what I mean? Like,
I've seen one of those in person, and nobody bats an eye.
Nobody takes it seriously because it's just like that's just like Americana. You know what I mean? That's just American political art is basically what it is. Nobody actually cares about this kind of stuff, and like liberals are not gonna. We can't even get them to make a strong argument. You think they're going to try to kill somebody? Be real.
The only thing liberals can make strong arguments for is zoning reform in specific areas. They'll write a book about it, and that'll be it.
Yeah, but it just serves as a way to like stop progressives from doing anything.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. This episode, we've got a continuation of last week's episode.
Yeah.
It's really just about the budget, particularly Medicaid, and about SCOTUS.
Yeah, we're here. It's Monday, May 19th. We're here bringing you Hiddo once again.
Yes, we are.
We got some budget talk and we got some SCOTUS talk. We're running it back from last week.
It's really two Hiddo classics, budget talk and SCOTUS talk. I mean, it can't be more quintessential than that.
That is really what our show has been built on. All of these years. But before we get into that, of course, I'll remind you to become a patron if you want early access to all of our episodes, or if you want to get on the postcard list. People were starting to receive their postcards last week. Pretty exciting. And I hope you enjoyed those. Next one not coming until July, so you got time to get in on the Patreon if you want to. All the socials in the description. Join the Hiddo Discord. Become a member of the community. It's all down there. You know what to do.
It's good. It's good, I promise. It's all good and just because good things are good and bad things are bad. Many such cases we will discuss later on.
Many such cases. And another way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple.
Talk about good things.
I think we only got one today, don't we?
We do.
Only one from the Ocean Guy. A light in the darkness. They say, first off, I would like to preface my review by stating I, of course, condemn Hamas and all forms of political violence. Seeing as I know few other leftists in my personal life, I am used to being driven to madness by either my Biden apologist liberal friends or my Catholic conservative family. This has been especially true for the last year, since I moved from the glorious People's Democratic Republic of Boulder, Colorado, back home to the hellish swamp that is South Florida, where half the streets I drive past are littered with Trump flags and the other half are littered with Cybertrucks. Gross. Ooh. The only thing that helps me cut through the constant Fox News playing in my house or the half-baked CNN headlines regurgitated by my friends is this podcast. These corked up white boys are doing the Lord's work by disseminating the news with a leftist spin and, more importantly, an upbeat attitude, doing their best to tell the people what is going on without making them utterly depressed at the state of the world, which is amazingly hard to do in this day and age. As an aspiring attorney, every day I am learning about laws or sections of the Constitution that are just becoming bad law seemingly on a whim of this administration, and we go forward. And as we go forward, we need more people like the Hiddo lads to help weather the storm, to help us weather the storm, I'm guessing, and navigate these dangerous waters. All I have to say is keep up the good work, boys. Y'all make living through these constant, unprecedented times bearable.
We greatly appreciate that 5-star review. And I just got to take a moment. Honestly, there hasn't been a lot of Elon Musk news. I think the administration kind of realized that
we effectively bullied him.
Doge was bad, and we really did bully him off, like the administration and whatnot. So I haven't got my fix in on like talking about Elon Musk, talking about the Cybertruck and how dumb that car is. At my Meijer, man, I'm starting to see this one Cybertruck parked there more and more often, and I just got to say, like, I've always observed Cybertrucks from my own car, like driving on the highway, like driving home from Ann Arbor. There was always one that I would see on the commute. I finally saw one like in person. I got to like stand next to it because it was parked kind of my car. Way too fucking big.
Made it worse.
It made it worse for me because it's like, not only does it look stupid, that's a PlayStation car.
Yeah.
It's just too big in order to like be a truck and accommodate like having a truck bed, but it's not even good at being a truck. It just kind of looks like a shitty low poly sedan with a lift kit and wide.
That's liable, allegedly, to kill you.
Yes, allegedly could possibly kill you.
Yeah, no, it's genuinely like man-made horrors beyond my comprehension type shit. It is, the Enlightenment was a bad move. Industrialization was a bad move. We need to go backwards.
Yep.
We need to return to the forest and whatnot. Yeah, no, the Cybertruck sucks, and I do miss making fun of Elon Musk. He was an easy target. Really, nobody likes the guy. But I think he retreated because Trump probably wanted him to.
Yeah.
Doge wasn't really doing anything. I think they ended up announcing that they found $150 billion in fraud, which is nothing.
Oh, yeah, no. Scale
nothing.
of the federal government, that's nothing.
Because he promised $2 trillion in cuts. He found $150 billion, so less than 10% of what he promised. And if people have been posting the chart of like the government budgets, 2024, 2025, on track with each other in terms of government spending. So he really did none of what he was supposed to do.
And it's also
maybe that's a good thing.
He found what, $150 billion in savings?
Yeah.
It's going to cost what? If I did this math right, it costs $17,000 to deport like one immigrant.
Yeah.
We found out when that DHS article came out. And they said they're securing funding to deport like 1 million immigrants this year or some shit like that, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that part of like the
1
last
million
budget?
immigrants a year.
Google, the Google calculator doesn't put commas in, so it's really hard to see this, but I'm going to count the zeros live on here, do a little scientific notation and whatnot. That's crazy. It's going to cost $17 billion just to do that.
Nice.
Like,
eat into the savings.
Man.
Yeah, and that's not to mention that, like, you know, government capacity has been gutted, so where the government's not serving now, people are going to have to do it themselves, and that costs them more money. Of course, when you cut government budget, that doesn't mean that people are just saving money. That's not how that works.
No.
You have to amend the tax code, which they're trying to, kind of.
Or sometimes you do budgetary tricks where the bad things that happen with your budget cuts take effect when the next guy comes around. And you still get to count those savings over a 10-year period.
Yeah.
Even though, like you said last episode, budget never lasts 10 years. We're lucky if the budget lasts one.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I think that's a good segue into our first topic here, which is the budget. Yes. Because last Thursday, we covered the evil budget. That's trying to take healthcare away from millions of people. Shortly after we talked about it last week, the budget failed its first vote in committee by a vote of 16 to 21, with a total of 5 Republicans voting against it. Just to remind you, the goal is to finish the budget by Memorial Day. That would be, Sunday or Monday of next week, I suppose, which means that Republicans got to get their coalition together.
They got to get their shit together.
Because Democrats, remember, it's a reconciliation bill, so Democrats just aren't needed in this process. They could do it entirely on their own, but they got to get their people together. Seems like the House is struggling to do that, and who knows what's going to happen in the Senate. So
yeah. It's almost like the hardliners in this instance, like Chip Roy and a couple others are being what Joe Manchin was when it came to Build Back Better, except they're also both to the right of their party.
Yeah. Why is no one ever to the left?
Why is no one ever stopping things being to the left of the party?
Leftistly, yeah. No, it never happens. The bill did eventually pass out of committee, which we'll talk about in a little while. But the House of Representatives, after that vote on Friday, continued their work through Sunday. But it is kind of funny why the bill was initially voted down. And speaking of Chip Roy, I think we should give his reasons. So the first iteration of the bill failed, as I said, by that vote of 16 to 21. All the Democrats voted against it, and then 4 Freedom Caucus members voted against it because it doesn't go far enough in cutting the government spending on healthcare.
Flanking the Nazis from the right.
Yes.
It's wicked work.
Yeah, Chip Roy specifically said, quote, this bill falls profoundly short. This bill has backloaded savings and front-loaded spending. I'm a no on this bill unless serious reforms are made today, tomorrow, and Sunday. Something needs to change or you're not going to get my support. So he's sort of making he's making the argument we sort of made last time, where we said, like, yeah, the bill front loads the savings, or backloads the savings, front loads the spending, so that they don't have to like deal with the political fallout.
Yeah.
But he's saying that's bad. We should cut everything now.
And like he's saying that's bad, like just on principle.
Yeah.
You know what? Everybody else is being sort of Aaron Sorkin West Wing about it. Like, oh, we're going to elaborately craft this scheme to blame the next guy or blame the Democrats and give us something to run on. Chip Roy said, no, I want people off Medicaid. Yeah. I can't stand sitting here while my tax dollars go and fund a single mother and her health care.
Yeah, it's fucked up. Single mother
she
should
needs
not
to get a better job.
Healthcare. Absolutely. Well, actually, the line that Chip Roy is advancing is that there's all these able-bodied adult men who are just sitting at home playing video games, when I think it's like 8% of people on Medicaid just don't work.
Hell yeah.
For reasons that are unexplained through like, being a primary caregiver or being in school or working part-time or being disabled, whatever it may be. It's very few people on the program that don't work.
That's not a lot.
Because as we said last week, Medicaid covers basic physical health care, maybe not even all of that in some cases. You still got to work to get access to everything else you need in life.
Exactly. No, 100%. You're not getting food with
you're not
your
getting
Medicaid
rent.
coverage.
You're not getting
That's
rent.
it. And you might not even be getting food after SNAP gets taken away from you too. My.
Now, we forgot to mention this last week, but I think this is important as we're talking about sort of political trends here and what we might see out of this bill. So Trump floated this idea of making a new tax bracket at $2.5 million and up, taxing that bracket at 39.6% as opposed to the current highest tax bracket, which is 37% after $600,000. First of all, not going to happen. He already backed down from it. Basically saying that he already backed down from it because Republicans obviously come to Congress so they can cut taxes on the wealthy.
Yeah.
Like that's the reason that they're there. But also like this idea seems sort of like right-wing populist in its framing, but it wouldn't do that much anyway because the ultra-wealthy people who are getting away not paying their taxes don't make money through personal income anymore. So this new tax bracket would generate, maybe a couple billion, but it just wouldn't be anything significant to offset the millions and millions and billions he wants to spend on deportations.
But also, it's a new tax bracket at 2.5 mil and beyond.
Yeah.
At 39.6% as opposed to 37.
Yes.
So it's only a 2.6% tax increase on the ultra wealthy.
Yes.
He got in there, and in the Oval Office, he framed this as a redistribution of wealth.
Did he actually?
I think so, because I saw a clip where I don't know if it was necessarily about this plan, but somebody asked him about like taxing the wealthy, and he's like, yeah, no, we're definitely going to do that. It's going to be a real redistribution. 2.6%, buddy. I'm talking like if you make 2.5 million on your W-2, that's 90%.
Yeah, you're getting 2% more in taxes on your and that's even if you count what you make as income. Which if you're making that much money, it's probably not on a W-2.
Oh no, absolutely not. You're just taking all of that and investing it into stocks.
Yeah, because like the argument from the left is that a lot of people that have a lot of money nowadays, they don't make their money through just personal income like payments from an employer. Yeah. They have a fuck ton of assets that they borrow money against.
Yes.
So you would need like a capital gains tax if you actually wanted to recuperate and redistribute that money.
Or a wealth tax.
Or a wealth tax, yeah. And Trump's just like fundamentally not going to do that. And according to some data analyses, working class Americans under this plan actually might be paying more in taxes than before this plan was implemented.
Isn't that just wonderful? Isn't that just absolutely beautiful?
Yeah, I've got a study here from Penn Wharton. They published an assessment of the budget that combined the effects of the welfare cuts and the tax cuts, and they found, quote, that many Americans who make less than $51,000 a year would see their after-tax income fall as a result of the Republican proposal beginning in 2026. People making about $51,000 and $17,000 could lose about $700 on average in after-tax income beginning in 2026, when factoring in both wages and federal aid. That reduction would worsen over the next 8 years. People reporting less than $17,000 in income would see a reduction closer to $1,000 on average, also increasing over time, a shortfall that underscores their reliance on federal benefits. By contrast, the top 0.1%, including those with incomes over $4.3 million, would gain an advantage of more than $389,000 in after-tax income in 2026. These earners benefit more from a Republican measure because it cuts taxes on the wealthy and makes other favorable changes, including for businesses, which may improve the value of their investments. Strictly, when you play the numbers out, the poor, the working class are losing money on the whole under this budget.
Losing money. And it's not even like if you're making $17,000, you gain like $1,000, which would be very significant considering the amount of money you're pulling in annually. You are losing $1,000. Even more significant. What the fuck?
And this, like, I feel very vindicated because this is exactly what we were talking about last week. We were saying, like, when you cut taxes, sure, people might be taking more money home, but on the whole, because you don't have that federal aid anymore, you might lose money. And that's exactly how it played out in the data analysis.
Is this considering like the Medicaid cuts that are coming into?
Yeah. It's considering the federal aid cuts and the tax cuts that people would receive. It didn't take into account like economic growth over time because it's sort of impossible to predict with the tariff regime right now. But if we are considering the federal aid that people get and the tax cuts that people are going to get, maybe get under this plan, then people in the working class are losing money on the whole. So I think that should tell you something about where the priorities of this administration lie. And that's not even considering that in 2029, the no tax on tips, no tax on a third of overtime would go away.
Yeah, any of the things that would actually help the people between like the $17,000 and $51,000 income bracket are just, they're gone.
Yeah. And like, if this is too nitty gritty for you, I get it. Like the numbers, you can get lost in the sauce. It can get very confusing. But to me, what this says is that this Republican administration, in this aspect specifically, is no different from the rest. No. Their goal since Reagan has been to come in, cut taxes on the wealthy, and make people poorer. That has been the goal for a long time, and that's exactly how the numbers would play out.
And they're gonna succeed in it, low-key, especially people who, I don't know, will maybe remain on Medicaid should the cuts pass in their current form. There's an analysis done by the AmericanProgressAction.org that sort of lists out like 20 key congressional districts and how much their premiums are going to go up. Premiums for Medicaid enrollees will go up based on what Republicans are doing. So they say, quote, if Congress fails to extend the enhanced tax credits for Medicaid premiums beyond this year, middle-income families will lose access to vital financial assistance that helps them afford marketplace premiums. Roughly 20 million people across income levels would face steep premium hikes starting in 2026, leading to nearly 4 million more Americans becoming uninsured by 2027. I would implore you to check out the chart that we will link in the description.
4 million uninsured by 2026.
4 million more uninsured on top of already people who will be kicked off based on work requirements and other more immediate cuts, right?
That's death. Like, that's death for some people.
That's death. There are 4 separate charts that they've compiled here. I want to read you off some numbers for how they've calculated premiums will increase if this tax credit that Joe Biden implemented is not extended and other Medicaid cuts that they're planning to go through. So first, single parent of 1 child who earns $85,000 a year. This is a single mother. Her premiums, if she lives in, let's say, New York's 11th district, will go up $12,000. They will go from $7,225 to $19,932.
Because of these cuts specifically?
Because of these cuts, and I think a lot of it is because of the tax credits. Oh no, benchmark premium without enhanced tax credits and Medicaid expansion rollback. Part of their analysis is that states who did Medicaid expansions, predominantly blue states, it's the red states that fell behind, saw a 11% decrease in premiums for enrollees because there's a bigger pool to help people who are more sick.
Oh, gotcha.
So they're factoring in that 11% decrease into their analysis because if Medicaid expansion has to be rolled back because states just don't have money coming in for Medicaid anymore because the program's being cut to the tune of the most it's ever been cut in American history, they're going to have to roll back their expansions. That's going to kick people off. They're already kicking people off because of work requirements. There's going to be a smaller pool of people because remember how insurance works. People pay their premiums, they pay into the thing, and then the people who are the sickest get to pay less because it's a big pot. that people are going into. If there's less people in the pot, the people who demand more from it, kind of a weird way to frame it, but the sickest among us, the most desperate among us, it costs more to take care of them because they're in a bad case. And if you diffuse that cost over less people, everyone is going to have to pay more to take up the burden. Wow. And in New York's 11th district, it's looking like there's going to be a lot of people that have to pay more. Specifically here in Michigan, in John James's district, Michigan 10, premiums for like a single mother making $84,000 are going to increase by about $4,000.
Mm-hmm. And John James voted for this budget reconciliation. And he will vote for the budget when it comes up for a House floor vote soon.
Said, fuck them kids. A young adult earning like $61,000 a year in John James district, that's a little bit less. We'll see premium increases of about $400. Back to New York 11, it's going to be $6,500 for you.
Yeah. And these people are literally like, these Republicans are literally killing their own people.
Yes.
Like they like, and you know, I'm not trying to cast any moral judgment on their districts being like poorer than other districts in some cases, but it's like, they're your own people.
Those are your constituents. Those are the people that vote for you. Yeah. And it says something mostly about people's like disenfranchisement with politics and how they a lot of people can't foresee that these things are going to happen because of the way that messaging works, yada, yada, yada. That's a separate discussion. But I do want to also highlight, for a family of four earning $129,000 annually in, once again, New York 11, they will see a $22,000 increase in their Medicaid premiums. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Medicaid is primarily for like when you consider like the working adults, most people who are on the program, people who are underemployed and can't afford private health insurance any other way. Yeah. It's so that they can get their ACA bullshit.
And children.
And children.
There's a lot of children on Medicaid, or people that are disabled might tap into the Medicaid funding. I think the stat is like 40% of all births are in some part funded by the Medicaid, by Medicaid funding.
Lovely.
And sure, like there might be a provision in the bill to say that like mothers with dependents, they aren't kicked off of this program and they aren't subject to work requirements. Actually, I think their provision was if you have a kid 7 or younger, then you can still tap in. Like you don't have to do the work eligibility stuff. But once they turn 8, you know, that kid is still a dependent for 10 more years at that point. Then you have to do the work requirements. Then you might get kicked off of your healthcare plan. But like you said, we're shrinking the amount of money in the program, which means that people are going to have to pay more.
Yeah. You're shrinking the amount of money generally in like the government insurance program because this is for ACA premiums.
Yeah.
Like if you have your health insurance through an Affordable Care Act marketplace, you will have to pay more for your premiums because of the Medicaid rollbacks. Mm-hmm. So this doesn't just affect people who are like on Medicaid. This affects anyone who's getting government health insurance.
Cool.
So that's lovely. And just goes to illustrate how like even if you don't think this may affect you, it's going to if you have any sort of government plan, ACA marketplace plan.
Yeah, not to mention like the broader social effects of people not having access to healthcare anymore. Like Americans have this tendency to view themselves and each other as isolated individuals who, if they work hard enough, will manage to get by without understanding that like we all live in a society together, and the well-being of your neighbor, of the people around you, of the people in your workplace also impacts you both economically and socially. Like there is no healthcare system where we don't all pay into it to some degree for everybody else to get access to it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
We view each other as like these isolated individuals where if I can just manage to get what I need and I can just manage to get what I need to get by, then I'll be fine. But like, it does matter how the other person is doing, because how you're doing is dependent upon if they can go to work and, you know, make the product that you want to go then and buy. So this shit, like, if the entire population gets less healthy because they have less access to healthcare, that's going to hurt you too.
Exactly. No, and it's like, I imagine there are a lot of people who have plans through something like the ACA marketplace that probably still ended up voting Republican because yada, yada, yada for various reasons. And maybe they even want these Medicaid cuts to happen. Maybe they think that the people who are on Medicaid, a lesser like tier of health insurance, they want to kick them off because they're like, oh no, you shouldn't be getting a free ride anymore. You're just an adult sitting playing video games. I'm working, but I can't afford a private plan, or I'm self-employed, so I need an ACA marketplace plan. You're going to be fucked by this because like, more people need to be taken care of. Like Medicaid expansion, the ACA helped do these Medicaid expansions. Like it has so many more downstream effects than people would consider beforehand. It's not just affecting people who are freeloading off of Medicaid.
And there's no recognition by the American electorate, certainly by like conservative politicians, that there is a such thing as the common interest.
Yeah.
And I think it's within the common interest that everybody is healthy, not just because like I want to be healthy, like for, selfish reasons, because it feels good to be healthy, but because society is better on the whole when everyone has access to the healthcare that they need to get up and go to work in the morning. It makes it a better country. There's of course the moral argument that I think everybody deserves to live a healthy and happy life and shouldn't be paywalled from getting access to the care that they need. But there's also like an economic and a social argument for the health of society to give everybody access to healthcare. There is a such thing as the common interest in the fact that we've allowed both, politicians on the left and the right have allowed us to devolve to this point where all that matters is the individual interest. I think is just toxic to a nation.
Rugged individualism is just like a cancer on this country. I swear to God, everybody just walks around thinking, oh, if I get mine, that's all that matters. Not understanding that other people getting theirs will help you get yours.
Yeah.
We live in a society, if you will.
And like there's conditions that apply to us equally, right? It's why like something like the Clean Water Act is important. Sure, you're paying into a system where you don't really see what happens to your tax money, but the fact that you have clean water and your neighbor has clean water is because there's a recognized common interest. It's the same thing for healthcare.
Yes.
If you want access to healthcare, it's better to build a system where it's universal than for you to just like focus on getting healthcare on your own by building personal wealth.
It's back to like the discussion we had last week about how like, what is it, like poverty is a social ill. It's a social contagion because like the more people that are poor, the more people that can't afford food will be forced into maybe stealing food to be able to get things done. And that's going to push them into like further paths, down further things that they don't want to go to. That is further just bad for society. You should want to use your tax dollars to fund programs that stop people from going hungry so that they don't have to resort to stealing or other forms of criminality in order to get by, which is just going to force them down more criminality as they're ostracized from the system in quote unquote like polite society. It's bad, people. We should be helping people get their basic needs met, and that's food, housing, and healthcare.
And even beyond like the political theories involving like the general will or the common interest, all of this is being done just to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy.
Yes.
Like exclusively this is being done to give tens of thousands, if not millions of more dollars to the wealthy, because that's what Republicans want to do. Bad, all around bad.
We love that. And it just, I just want to understate again, it is incredibly important to take in consideration that like Medicaid cuts do not just affect those on Medicaid. They affect anyone who's maybe even on the ACA marketplace. That's private insurance.
Yeah. And I feel like, this isn't a fully thought out position and I'd have to like consult an economist or something. But I feel like if ACA marketplace premiums go up, that will be cover for other health insurance plans to raise their premiums because they have less competition in the market.
Yeah, they don't have to compete with the ACA marketplace. Yeah. That's true. That could very well happen. It's
although that requires deeper analysis, but that's just a thought.
Yeah. It is crazy because it's like it should be intuitive to think that when Medicaid was expanded, it took people off of the ACA marketplace and onto Medicaid. Like, man, that's crazy.
It's why even like a public option would be superior here, because then at least, the government not having to make profit would force private insurers to offer a little bit more, be a little bit better, because they'd have to compete with a public option that's always going to be cheaper. The ACA is not that, to be very clear. But that's why, something like a public option would be, I would take that over what we have right now if we can't get to universal healthcare, which it feels like we never will.
Yeah,
but
it
is what it is.
It's not very fun. It's not very fun. Just to be just abundantly clear, I do want to read from the study about that 11% figure, just in case I misspoke earlier. A 2018 study by health economists, Aditi P. Sen and Thomas Delir found that ACA marketplace premiums were 11% lower in Medicaid expansion states than in non-expansion states. This analysis found that Medicaid expansion reduces premiums because lower income people who typically have higher healthcare costs move out of the private marketplace plans and into Medicaid, with a healthier, lower cost group remaining in the private market. Premiums go down.
Gotcha.
So it's not quite what I said earlier, but it's a situation where we're getting the sick people off of the ACA plans and they're being fully taken care of by the Medicaid plans, which reduces the burden that you have to pay on an ACA plan because that high cost individual is no longer there. Their costs aren't being dispersed onto you.
Right. Yeah.
Lovely.
Makes sense. Anyways, this bill is advancing.
Unfortunately, this bill is advancing.
It did advance. Funny enough, it advanced with the 4 Freedom Caucus members voting present rather than voting yes or no, I guess, on the question within the committee. So it seems like they still have some holdups, but they allowed the committee to advance it to the floor, where I'm sure there will be like a trillion different amendments that are introduced.
Yep.
So the budget is moving its way forward. And I got some quotes from Chip Roy. I said he would come back, and he's coming back.
Okay.
Chip Roy said, quote, "The bill does not yet meet the moment, leaving almost half of the green new scam subsidies continuing."
They are constantly shadowboxing with a policy that never passed. They're constantly fighting with something that is not law. It doesn't even exist. No Democrat talks about the Green New Deal anymore.
I mean, he's got to be talking about like the Joe Biden subsidies for like solar panels or like green energy tax credits.
Every climate initiative just became the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
That's what happened. That's how they kind of took that one.
Yeah. Chip Roy also said, quote, "More, it fails to end the Medicaid money laundering scam and perverse funding structure that provides 7 times more federal dollars for each dollar of state spending for the able-bodied relative to the vulnerable. This all ultimately increases the likelihood of continuing deficits in non-Obamacare expansion states like Texas expanding in the future. We can and must do better before we pass the final product."
Wait.
He's saying it'd be a bad thing if Texas expanded Medicaid under the ACA.
It would be a bad
God forbid.
thing. It would be a bad thing if Texas lowered its premiums for people on the ACA marketplace.
Yeah.
Love that, man.
Just a reminder, like, sure, they held up the bill for a couple of days there, but these guys they did it for evil reasons. They're fundamentally evil people.
That's insane. Yeah, no, because we had talked about, oh my God, are we going to have to rely on Chip Roy to stop these cuts from happening?
Yeah.
Kind of, but in a bad way.
He's just evil. He wants, the reason he held up the bill is because it's not evil enough for him.
It's almost like I need him to be like, I don't know, somehow like even more evil so that the bill could just never possibly pass. Yeah. I know there is some drama with like more moderate Republicans, if that's even a word. The oxymoron moderate Republicans don't want the Medicaid cuts to start during Trump's term because like obviously for political reasons, and they're kind of held out about that one. And there are factions in the party saying they're going to go to Trump, and like Trump doesn't want Medicaid cuts. That's why things happen in 2029, or at least he says in public he doesn't want Medicaid cuts. Moderate Republicans are threatening to bring these things to Trump to force him to make a statement on like what's going on. And I feel like that sounds like a good strategy, but he's just going to say to cut it anyway. And he's just going to do the Mike Johnson line of we're getting 24-year-old men who just sit around and play video games off of Medicaid. Yeah.
Fundamentally untrue. Just a lie. They're straight. I don't even know where he got this figure of like Medicaid right now. It's 7 times more likely to insure like an able-bodied man than someone who's vulnerable. I don't know where that figure is from. I couldn't find
lucky
it.
Number 7, baby.
It was just a claim that he made, I guess. He also claimed, I was watching some of the committee hearing when the budget failed, and he said something like, this budget doesn't cut Medicaid, it actually expands Medicaid. Just a lie.
What?
We're just making things up. Like the bill explicitly cuts Medicaid over 10 years. Like that's the goal. Maybe he was arguing it doesn't cut it initially, but it should. I don't know.
Exactly. It's an expansion because the program is allowed to continue, and it should not be allowed to continue. We should get rid of Medicaid. Yeah. So that's great. Man, it's like the Freedom Caucus members are just unhappy with the amount of people who get health care. They're unhappy that more people aren't going to die.
Yeah.
That's good.
Seems to be the goal is to kill as many people as possible.
Yeah, man.
All for who knows if it's like out of malice, like they really just want to hurt poor people, or it's just like gross negligence because they want to give tax cuts. It doesn't really matter. Same outcome either way, but yeah.
And it's like we do still have more Chip Roy shenanigans to look forward to. Even though the bill made it out of committee on Sunday night, the Freedom Caucus released a statement saying that the bill, quote, fails to actually honor or promise to significantly correct the spending trajectory of the federal government, and that the Freedom Caucus is, quote, determined and committed to working through the remaining obstacles within this bill.
Yeah.
That's gas. Work requirements are set to move up to 2027 still again after the midterms, and as of Monday morning, the details of the changes are not quite public.
Yeah. Just a reminder, these people want to take all public health insurance away.
Oh, if they could, they would.
They want to take all public health insurance away. They want you to be subjected to the health insurance market so the market can derive as much money out of you as possible because it's an inelastic good that you absolutely need.
Well, you tell them ACA premiums are going up and they're like, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, you should pay.
These people,
That's what it is.
Either through lobbying or just being fundamentally evil, they want you to pay a lot more on healthcare, and they will do anything they can to make it happen.
Yeah,
that seems to be the goal. But that's the budget. We'll see what happens. Apparently, a vote's coming up this week.
They want the bill on the floor by Thursday, so gotta love it.
We'll see if Mike Johnson gets his Memorial Day deadline, I guess.
And it's also just like this is just the House. Still got to go through the Senate.
Yeah, I feel like there's going to be maybe some more opposition there. Josh Hawley, famously, he keeps saying like it's a no-go. He's not going to vote for it.
Josh Hawley keeps saying no. I know that when they released their like budget frameworks a couple months ago, the Senate GOP didn't want the tax cuts in there. They just wanted more money. They just wanted 10,000 SS officers. More money to ICE, more money to border wall, more money for deportations.
Yeah, I guess they always could just like fall back on split because it is called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Yes.
Is it? It is. That's the name in Congress.
We had Build Back Better and Big Beautiful Bill. Wow.
Oh my! This is just a Biden presidency.
They're biting Joe Biden slow. Hardliners in their own party.
Another triple B. But they could just break it up into 3 bills because it is One Big Beautiful Bill right now. Initially, I think that might have been the plan. But then they combined it because Trump said he wanted it. But I think they could pretty easily try to pass all the DHS funding because even some Democrats would vote for that if we're being real. So that'll sail by. But I think the contention will be Medicaid and taxes for a lot of people. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully something works.
Yeah,
in people's favor.
I hate commercials.
Me too.
I hate listening to them. I hate when I hear them, whether it's on TV or on podcasts.
Grr, I just can't stand commercials. They're
the worst. And the one place you can go to avoid commercials, like this one you're listening to right now, is patreon.com/headintheofficepod. Become a patron, and you get early access to our episodes, and they're all completely commercial-free. No more interruptions.
And you could be one of our friends.
And that's arguably the more important point.
And, in trying times like this, friendship is what we really need.
Friendship's really important. And you can buy your way into being a friend of ours by heading over to patreon.com/headintheofficepod. Again, early access to episodes, no commercials, access to all of our content before anyone else sees it. Become a patron. Not great, but I guess it's time to move on to SCOTUS. Some good stuff actually out of SCOTUS.
Some good, there's some... I will say there's some news.
Nothing is truly bad.
Out of SCOTUS, exactly. And I will start off the little SCOTUS segment by talking about what we talked about on Friday. I personally fell victim to breaking news came out. I read headlines, and I didn't dive too much deeper in the article before we talked about it. I talked about how SCOTUS took up birthright citizenship. They did not take up a birthright citizenship case. They took up a case about... universal injunctions that just so happen to pertain to birthright citizenship. So I got some
specifically because the administration is trying to dance around the question and not present that to the court. Because if they did, it would be a resounding loss.
Yes, because I know I forgot to get some corrections out there for the Spotify and Apple listeners. So for that, I do deeply and humbly apologize.
We're here asking for your forgiveness.
Exactly.
We love lying to you. We do it consistently, but this time we weren't trying to.
I will stand on business and say that every single headline talking about this says SCOTUS arguing about birthright citizenship.
Yep.
Every single fucking... What can I say?
It's fine. It's fine. Who cares? Nobody cares. Nothing's real.
Nothing's real anymore. And I'm perpetuating it purposefully. I am. But last week, like I said, there were 2 major pieces of SCOTUS news. The first was SCOTUS taking up a case pertaining to Trump's birthright citizenship EO. But while the context of the case... the context of the case is birthright citizenship and Trump submitting the executive order. The legal question that the case actually pertains to is, like we said before, universal injunctions. And can judges in lower federal courts implement injunctions that are binding nationwide?
I think it's interesting that this only comes up under Donald Trump. We got maybe 1 million universal injunctions against everything Joe Biden did.
We got a universal injunction against an money laundering law.
We got a universal injunction against the student debt stuff when Mohela, the one that was being sued on behalf, was like, this is actually fine. Like, we get our money anyway.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't even care.
They didn't even sue. They were sued on behalf of by some other group, man. Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. And it's like, universal injunctions have become pretty controversial in recent years. Since 2015, the rate of universal injunctions issued has like dramatically risen to stop things both from Democrats and Republicans. Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Thomas, and Kagan have all issued statements in the last couple of years criticizing the use of these injunctions, and multiple justices have criticized them just sort of on the grounds that they encourage like judge shopping. Kagan said in 2022, quote, in the Trump years, Trump won because we're back. In the Trump years, people used to go to the Northern District of California, and in the Biden years, they go to Texas. We are very familiar with legal groups shopping around for judges in Texas to get favorable rulings. And judge shopping is problematic for obvious reasons. However, the bad that it causes, I feel, in this instance specifically is a bit overstated when compared to like the current judicial landscape.
Well, good things are good, bad things are bad, folks.
Good things are good and bad things are bad. I fuck with the universal injunctions that injunct bad things.
Absolutely.
I don't fuck with injuncting good things. And I think that's a principle that we can all stand on. And I think that this is genuinely a principle that's workable if there was to be universal injunction reform. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's pretty easy to do reform in this instance and say like, okay, only for like the really bad things can you do a universal injunction.
I feel like, you know,
can't do an injunction for like the trans ban. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I get to decide when the universal injunctions apply. I feel like and you know, I'm not an expert on like court processes, of course.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's got to be a way, like if a district court wants to do a universal injunction, for SCOTUS to quickly decide, yes, this flies, no, this doesn't fly.
Yes.
I feel like there's got to be a way that they can do that. I know they're busy people. You know, they hear like 80 cases out of like 1 million every year.
Yeah.
But like, there's got to be something that we could do.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and it's like a lot of justices have like I said, they have problems with universal injunctions as a thing, but it's like you could reform these in a lot of ways where you don't say, in this case specifically, no. Yeah. Because that would have very bad consequences down the line. And by down the line, I mean like tomorrow if the decision came out today.
Well, yeah, because like this is like plainly unconstitutional.
Yeah.
What they're trying to do.
That's why I say like you could very reasonably do reform to say that only in instances of just like plain and direct unconstitutionality can you implement an universal injunction, and maybe that injunction gets fast tracked to the Supreme Court for review. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think people should be doing more of their jobs.
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
SCOTUS like regularly throughout history issues cases where, or issues decisions in cases where they like set up a new rule for lower courts to follow. It's a common thing the Supreme Court does.
Yeah.
I feel like they might end up doing something like that here.
Oh no!
But my worry is that they'll just say like no more universal injunctions at all. Every individual has to explain their citizenship in front of a court if they want to keep it.
That's my big worry as well, and that's kind of exactly what would happen if they decided to get rid of universal injunctions.
Psychotic. I mean, we're talking like millions of people.
Yes. It is absolutely fundamentally insane to expect, I guess, undocumented immigrants to have to lawyer up in every single instance of their birthright citizenship rights being violated. Mm-hmm. Because without a universal injunction, the way that things would play out is that decisions in court would only apply to the people involved in the lawsuit.
Yes.
And they wouldn't apply more broadly. You would have to challenge everything. You would have to lawyer up.
Yeah.
As soon as you give birth.
First of all, it would cause like a massive bottleneck in the court system with like millions and millions of people trying to contest the fact that the government's trying to take their citizenship away. But also, as I think Ketanji Brown Jackson said, it basically creates a catch me if you can policy. Mm-hmm. The government is doing this thing, violating your rights, but you only get to stop this violation or remedy this violation if you can manage to catch them.
Yeah.
That is not a world I want to live in.
No.
I don't want to live in a world where the government, if they violate your rights, is only held accountable if you can catch up to them individually.
Yes.
Because I get it. Like when the government violates your rights, it's going to have to play out in the court system. That's just like the way of the world. But for every single person who has had their rights violated to have to individually argue their case every single time is fucking insane.
And it's also like, the Trump administration knows that previously justices have called into question the constitutionality or whether or not it should just be allowed to have universal injunctions. And that's why they chose to litigate the case on these grounds and bring that as the essential legal question. Because if they knew, if they brought the birthright citizenship executive order, they know that it is very likely, even with the insane makeup on the court, that it would be flat out rejected and they would be told no.
Absolutely.
They're trying to get universal injunctions taken away so that they can precisely get away with it in districts where people don't want to challenge or get away with it in cases where people don't want to challenge. They are actively trying to violate your rights, and they are saying that they want to violate your rights. They're telling the court that they want to do this to get away from having to answer that as like the chief legal question.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like the argument they're advancing on the issue of birthright citizenship specifically is the sort of like birth tourism, this idea that people come over to the country on like a tourist visa, and then have kids purposefully so that they're U.S. citizens, or, you know, illegal immigrants coming over and having kids here so they like set roots and they can't be kicked out, or at least the kid can't be kicked out, right? That's the argument they advance. What they're saying is that we should be able, through executive order, to change the Constitution in the face of contemporary problems. Mm-hmm. Never have they accepted that argument for anything else.
Yes.
We have argued on behalf of I'm not even anti-gun.
Yeah.
We have argued on behalf of gun reform because the way in which guns function have changed so dramatically since the time of the Second Amendment. And their argument always is that, well, the original meaning says shall not infringe.
Uh-huh.
They don't believe in anything.
No.
They have no fucking principles whatsoever.
And it's also, you have to consider that if universal injunctions were to be taken away, or if this universal injunction specifically was decided that it was unconstitutional and not allowed, and the Trump administration was allowed to carry out with this catch me if you can situation, the core question about whether the executive order is constitutional would never have any means of being addressed.
Yeah.
It would never make it to the Supreme Court because it would be fundamentally almost impossible. If an individual wins their case and the courts rule on the side of them and that they are in fact a citizen for being born here, even though their parents were undocumented, they're not going to appeal that because they won.
Yeah.
And if the Trump administration loses in one case, they're not going to appeal that because they keep appealing it up. It's going to go to SCOTUS, and SCOTUS is going to say no.
Yeah.
And then everything that they've done will be taken away. They're just going to take their L's in individual instances and then go to districts where judges are favorable to them and are giving them favorable rulings.
Mm-hmm.
And then rights will just be violated without any mechanism of doing a check on the federal government here.
Yeah.
And you can't take it away.
That's why it's like, catch me if you can. Because like, okay, yeah, you got me. You get to be a citizen. But I've got these other, 10 million people that haven't caught me yet. And at least I'm doing damage to them. It's like, we talk about harm reduction. They're doing harm maximization.
Yeah,
they're trying to maximize. They can't fully top it out. They can't get every single person. But they're maximizing the amount of harm they can do.
Exactly.
That's the goal.
It's just like, it's fucking insane. And I know that there are other methods that you could do something like this. You could, Brett Kavanaugh, I think, said that you could do a class action lawsuit to include immigrants in this class and whatnot and sue the government, or states could sue. But that brings up other questions of whether or not, what happens if an immigrant moves to another state? Then can they be persecuted again? The class actions are kind of hard to do federally now. So it's like, let's not put more barriers in the way of getting people's rights to not be violated, I think.
Yeah, I feel like the thing that the court should be able to do is just order the administration to argue on the merits of the case itself, not on the topic of universal injunctions. I know that case hasn't reached SCOTUS yet. I'm guessing it will eventually.
Oh, it's got to.
But that seems to be the most imminent question isn't on universal injunctions, but it should be on the fact that they're trying to take away birthright citizenship, something plainly in the Constitution.
Plainly, raw rules is written. Come on,
Plain
right there,
text.
man. And it's like, in my view, I feel like the worst thing that a universal injunction does is possibly wrongfully stop a law from going into effect. That may be good while it goes through the possibly years-long process of appeals up to the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
That's the worst thing that it could do. You have a good law, say that, I don't know, fucking Joe Biden passed that was universally injuncted against in Texas.
Yeah.
And they have to appeal it for maybe 2 years, and then eventually the law gets into effect. That's the worst case scenario when you allow universal injunctions to reign.
Yeah.
The other side of that situation is you let people's just rights be violated, and there's nothing that can be done about it if you get rid of them.
Yeah. Yeah, and
You know what I mean?
seems much worse.
I would much rather keep the
right
universal injunction right now in this instance as a harm reduction measure against the Trump administration than get rid of it just on principle because maybe it does some fucky things legally and it may not be the best thing considering how our system is supposed to function. But when we have, once again, such a bad actor in the Trump administration going and blatantly defying the rule of law, defying any of the processes that make up the rule of law, ignoring everything, why would we constrain ourselves to trying to find the most perfect way to run that system when nobody's going to care, when the administration at hand isn't going to care if it's not serving them?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no point in bending over backwards to hold ourselves accountable to rules or how things should be when the administration so plainly will not.
Yeah, all bets are off when we're talking about fascism.
Exactly.
It's the same thing as the filibuster. If the Republicans right now said yeah, let's get rid of the filibuster, and Democrats voted for it, I'd criticize the Democrats.
Yes.
Not because I principally stand with the filibuster. I think it's a generally undemocratic thing. The Senate itself is an undemocratic body if we're talking about representation of the people because of the the population issue. But we should not hamstring ourselves purposefully when we're trying to defeat these people, because the greater threat to democracy right now is not the filibuster, is not universal injunctions, it's the Republican Party.
Yeah, those are luxuries we can argue about later.
Yeah.
Those are luxuries we can argue about when somebody not evil is in power.
The assumptions of the system have changed.
Yes.
The assumption for the Republican Party is now that they want to install a regime that, forever operates at their behest. And when you have people that fundamentally don't believe in the project of liberal democracy, you can't quibble about these minor procedural things. You got to beat them no matter what.
It's just like the whole argument for getting rid of universal injunctions is that the system is supposed to be designed so that people bring their individual cases to district courts, to federal courts. Those cases are litigated, judges issue opinions, and if something is wrong across the country, those opinions come out in multiple different jurisdictions, and then those are compiled for appeals courts to consider if things go to appeals. Then the appeals courts issue their opinions, that those things are compiled to the Supreme Court if a thing is appealed to the court, and Supreme Court has this body of judicial opinion to work off of, as well as their own expertise in interpreting the Constitution to ultimately make a ruling on the constitutionality of some sort of issue.
Yeah.
That's how the system is supposed to work when people, I guess, are being fair and aren't just so blatantly violating your rights.
Yeah.
In instances like this, we do not have time. We are not afforded the luxury of letting people be kicked out of the country and possibly never be brought back.
Yeah.
It's simple.
Yeah, no, the stakes have changed. Like the stakes fundamentally are far higher than they were before. You have to use every tool in your arsenal, even those that like shouldn't exist in a liberal democracy, because we're not right now. We're not trying to like push for progress. We are defending the existence of liberal democracy itself.
I am defending the status quo.
I've got my quibbles with liberal democracy, but there are worse alternatives. And the difference between liberal democracy and fascism is often thousands of, if not millions of deaths.
Yeah.
So there's bigger stakes.
I am both a status quo defender and a status quo attacker, depending on the administration. And that's just how it kind of has to go. What I can reasonably fight for has shifted.
That's right. That's right.
And I don't fuck with that. Look at me. Like, also just look at us defending SCOTUS.
I am
relying on the Supreme Court of the United States and God-forsaken justices on that court to stop fascism right now.
I'm a prisoner of my time.
I am.
And I gotta know, it is really funny that the 3 Supreme Court justices that Trump appointed have been consistently voting against him in all of these cases. Amy Coney Barrett, I did not understand your game.
I never would have fucking guessed that it was going to be the Bush appointees that were the most insane.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what?
Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, fucking demons.
Neocons were cooking.
Like, I genuinely did not expect the fate of liberal democracy to depend on Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, and Neil Gorsuch, and for them to make, like, decent decisions.
Yeah, exactly. No, 100%. For them to be, like...
Jury's still out. We don't know exactly how they're going to decide on this birthright citizenship stuff, but, like, they've been doing better than expected.
I don't know. I feel like I've read conflicting things. I feel like every article that I read about this that isn't clickbaited in the fucking headline is talking about how like justices look poised to get rid of universal injunctions. But when I actually like watch the litigation that's playing out, like there were a couple clips, like the Ketanji Brown Jackson clip. I saw a Kagan clip where she's questioning things. But I also saw a Brett Kavanaugh clip where he's like, say we get rid of universal injunctions. The way the executive order is like written is that organizations have 30 days to like issue guidance. How the hell would you do this? And it's like, in my mind, it's like, oh shit, Brett Kavanaugh, the activist judge?
Exactly.
Brett Kavanaugh, the activist judge, considering things beyond the legal question at hand when it comes to making his ruling? What's going on here? Maybe they are doing lawfare.
No, it's not like they've become allies or anything. I think they're just doing this for the sake of self-preservation. I think they see the writing on the wall and they realize that if Trump can like carve out the system such that courts are obsolete, then they have no power. And what they've worked for their entire lives, selfishly, probably for bad reasons, is basically gone.
And it's like they're already the weakest branch. And I feel like they all recognize that.
Well, they're the strongest branch nowadays.
But the
Supreme Court envisioned as the weakest branch, certainly the strongest branch nowadays. But I think they realize like if Trump can literally do anything without the courts, or if any decision that the courts make that Trump doesn't like just doesn't apply, then they don't exist fundamentally. I just didn't expect them to like be so anti-Trump.
No, I didn't.
When they got their jobs because of him.
I really thought they were going to fall in line.
Yeah.
But I guess lifetime appointments worked out in this instance. Well, actually, no. Lifetime appointments didn't even work out in this instance because if appointments were shortened, I mean, the 3 ones that are doing good right now would still be there. It'd be the Bush appointees that would hopefully have gotten kicked out.
Yeah, no, we can push for Supreme Court reform once we don't have a fascist takeover looming. You know what I mean? Or once we don't have a fascist takeover in progress.
I'm off my abort the court shit, unless they do a bad decision here.
Well, abort the court when we're in a position to make the court better.
Precise.
But if we aborted the court, I mean, it's like degrowth. I mean, Trump is a degrowth president.
Well,
but for bad reasons, and there will be bad outcomes.
I personally wouldn't advocate for packing the court right now.
Absolutely.
Right now. However,
I want to pack the court goodly.
should somebody I like win in 2028, then I think we should really consider packing the court. I think it would do a lot of good.
Well, fundamentally, I'm not a proceduralist.
No,
I want good things to happen. Good things are good. Bad things are bad. There is such a thing as the common interest.
100%.
It is what it is, brother.
And while we continue talking about the Supreme Court, we do have another kind of good decision to talk about. So the next decision the Supreme Court issued pertains to the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. 7-2? Did I say more?
7-2, baby.
7-2. So the Supreme Court decided that they were going to continue halting deporting immigrants under the Alien Enemies Act. I don't need to say who voted against it.
Shout out Brett Kavanaugh. Shout out Amy Coney Barrett.
Shout out
Neil Gorsuch.
Oh my God. It's good. It's good.
It's so funny.
The two who won't be named, they released a dissent, or I guess Alito penned a dissent where he just got overly technical about why we should let these people be kicked out of the country with no notice whatsoever. Of
course.
It truly fascist shit, truly Nazi jurisprudence, if I do say so myself.
Absolutely, brother.
But yeah, according to ABC, the order only applies to people being held in Texas. However, right now, I'm not sure if it's just those held in the North Texas Detention Center that the case was originally about, or if it's all of Texas. It can sometimes be impossible to find granular information about things like that unless you read the briefs. And guys, I'm not a lawyer.
Well, the briefs are way too long.
The briefs are way too long.
They every sentence they reference 30 other cases that I have no context for. It's too much.
Smart people, smart people can't be fascists.
We are tertiary sources of news.
Exactly.
We distill the news from other people that have distilled the primary sources for us.
Yes, and I've looked at 5 secondary sources, and I found one that told me it was Texas. I couldn't find whether or not it's just North Texas or Texas broadly. I would assume it's just North Texas since that's what the original case was about, and they really don't like doing good things sometimes. You know what I mean? They really don't like just saying, also, we recognize it's bad here, let's recognize it's bad everywhere. Yeah. Because I don't understand how something can be unconstitutional one place but not everywhere. Yeah. I don't understand how that's not just immediately precedent that other things have to fall in line with.
Yeah, I think we might have glazed them a bit too much. A lot of what the 3 Trump appointees have been doing is just kind of kicking the can.
Oh, that's exactly what they did here. Yeah. Notably, the court isn't really taking a stand on any of the issues at hand. They're only saying that these specific immigrants cannot be deported at this moment under the AEA, but they can still be deported under other lawful means.
Of course.
And they really only found issue with the idea that the Trump administration gave them less than 24 hours notice before they were going to deport them.
Yeah.
That's it.
And it's
it's just a halt.
It's better than what it could have been. But
absolutely.
Like we said, they're kind of just kicking the can down the road. They're not fully enabling Trump to do this stuff, but they're not doing much to stop him when they certainly have the power to.
Yeah, they did not rule on the legality of the Alien Enemies Act, the invocation of it at all. Nor did they make a determination about how long the Trump administration needs to give deportees to challenge their case. They only said it needs to be longer than 24 hours. The majority wrote, quote, "The detainees' interests at stake are accordingly particularly weighty. Under these circumstances, notice roughly 24 hours before the removal, devoid of information about how to exercise due process rights to contest that removal, surely does not pass muster."
At least due process got a shout out.
That's what I'm gonna say. It's reassuring that they do reference the fact that these immigrants, undocumented or not, have due process rights.
Yep.
However, I personally feel like it's only in the context of them not wanting to say anything about the Alien Enemies Act.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like a silver lining, but maybe it's not. It's a coin flip, really.
Yeah.
I don't know. They also mentioned something later on after that quote about how we're too far away from the ground to be able to make a determination about how long these deportees need to be given before notice. So they kicked the case back to the ontologically evil Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Evil group of people.
Insanely evil group of people.
Louisiana, right? That's the Louisiana, Alabama, the part of the South.
I think Texas might be a part of the Fifth Circuit too. I'm not exactly sure what states compromise it. I'm pretty sure Louisiana is in there. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, famously conservative, quite literally infamously conservative. It is the most conservative federal appeals courts in the nation. 75% of the justices are given by Republican appointees. Nice. So they're conservatives. And I mean, some of these guys are from the Bush era. So if we're following the track record of Alito and Thomas, that they got to be they got to be off the rock.
I don't know where Bush found those guys. It's crazy.
I don't know, man. Whatever the Heritage Foundation equivalent was back then was just cooking.
Yeah.
And 6 of the 26 justices on the court were Trump appointees.
And they're acting like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This was the court that always shot down things Biden did. Like,
Yeah.
I swear to God, every single time we talked about Biden passing a law, it was, well, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals said no. I think I'm thinking Texas's Fifth Circuit, because when they were doing the buzzsaw buoys, I think that went to the Fifth Circuit. And the Fifth Circuit's like, no, actually, the federal government can't stop them from putting razor wire in the water.
Yes, I remember.
So I think that was the Fifth Circuit. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
That came after Greg Abbott was like, Joe Biden won't let us murder these immigrants.
Yeah.
He's like, I would otherwise, though.
After, I think he also invoked the invasion clause of the Texas Constitution to say we can put gunboats on the Rio Grande.
Yep. And people just say shit, man.
People really just say shit. And I thought we were supposed to have laws to like stop that, but
Guess not.
Whatever. If there was any court in the country that would find the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act unlawful or lawful, despite the precedent around what is and is not an invasion, it would be the Fifth Circuit.
Certainly. Yeah.
We have that decision to look forward to whenever that decision comes out.
Yeah.
I hope it gets appealed to the Supreme Court and they make a good decision. I have more faith in the Supreme Court than the Fifth Circuit.
That is bad, folks. I mean, it's definitely going to get appealed no matter what the Fifth Circuit says, either the Trump administration or
the ACLU or
the ACLU,
whoever's bringing the case.
The plaintiff or whoever's on the other side will appeal it up. It'll get back to SCOTUS no matter what. But I hope Amy Coney Barrett wakes up feeling woke that day.
Hell yeah.
And rules on the side of not sending people to El Salvador.
It's just like, you know it's going to come back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Why kick the can? Maybe it's a scope question. Maybe I'm just not enough of a lawyer to understand how the law works and how the courts work. Maybe it really is an issue of just like they don't have the authority to make a ruling on that thing in that instance. I can certainly understand that when it comes to the last one we talked about.
Yeah.
But this one was like all based on an emergency injunction. I feel like they could have gone farther if they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, the court can really say literally anything.
Yeah. It is the Supreme Court.
It's the Supreme Court. So, I guess we'll see what happens. We are getting close to the end of June. And the end of June is when we get all of our SCOTUS decisions that they've been deliberating about. That's where we'll get the decision on universal injunctions. So it's going to be maybe a terrifying June, maybe a good June. Who knows?
Do you think the universal injunctions waits until June? Or do you think they talk about it? They release it before?
I think it waits until June because what I was reading said they're not going to make a decision until June.
Oh, man.
So I could see us sort of being in limbo for a while. But at the very least, while we're in limbo, birthright citizenship has not been revoked.
This is true.
Because of the existence of these universal injunctions. So we have a little while.
We have a little while. A brief respite, really. We're resting at the bonfire.
Yeah, one thing people really haven't been talking about with the universal injunctions thing, or with birthright citizenship specifically, is that if people come here, say they're undocumented, and they have their kid here, that kid will essentially just be stateless.
Yeah.
Which feels very problematic for the purposes of, being a person in the modern world.
Yeah.
I know conservatives will be like, well, they'll just be a citizen of their home country. And it's like, well, what if going back to their home country means like death from gang violence or something?
What if it's like an asylum case or some other bullshit?
So birthright citizenship, good.
Yeah.
What are the good things about, the Constitution?
I'm a plain text originalist is what I'm learning.
Yeah, when it comes to
recently.
good things. When it comes
to the 14th Amendment, I'm a plain text originalist.
Morality is a thing, folks.
Yes, it is. You know what? I see things through the lens of ideology. I'm not afraid to admit it.
I am an ideologue.
I'm not afraid to admit that I have a worldview. And too many people pretend that they don't have a worldview and that they're just living life objectively. False.
Yeah, you do have, even if your worldview is just rules as written.
Yeah.
That's not ideology free, brother.
No, it is not.
Those things are value laden.
You cannot separate yourself from ideology, so why pretend?
It's true.
Why pretend? I'm out here. I'm an ideologue, loud and proud.
Everyone's got a worldview, and everyone's worldview portends certain moral outcomes, and you got to contend with that. And for me, I want people to be happy and healthy.
You can't separate yourself from society. Once again, we live in a society. Mm-hmm. We do.
You're trapped here, me and you, brother.
We're trapped in the same thing. Our actions, they have consequences, and they affect each other. Uh-huh. Maybe I'm on Medicaid. Maybe on the ACA marketplace. When I lose my coverage, you're fucked, buddy. It could happen. It could happen in a hypothetical world. But in response to all this, specifically to the Alien Enemies Act ruling, Trump wrote on Truth Social, this is a long one, quote, The Supreme Court has just ruled that the worst murderers, drug dealers, gang members, and even those who are mentally insane who came into our country illegally are not allowed to be forced out without going through a long, protracted, and expensive legal process, one that will take possibly many years for each person, and one that will allow these people to commit many crimes before they even see the inside of a courthouse. The result of this decision will let more criminals pour into our country, doing great harm to our cherished American public. It will also encourage other criminals to illegally enter our country, wreaking havoc and bedlam wherever they go. The Supreme Court of the United States is not allowing me to do what I was elected to do. Sleepy Joe Biden allowed millions of criminal aliens to come into our country without any process, but in order to get them out of the country, we have to go through a long and extended process. In any event, thank you to Justice Alito and Justice Thomas for attempting to protect our country. This is a bad and dangerous day for America. That was written by Stephen Miller with Trump diction added into it.
Hell yeah.
I swear to God, man.
It's hilarious that Trump appointed a third of the court and that third is not voting along with him.
It's so gas. Yeah. It's so gas, man.
Also, people keep saying like, oh, you want due process for these immigrants. Well, Joe, there was no due process when they came in.
That's how that works.
That's not what due process means.
Different issues. Yeah.
Due process protects you from the government when they accuse you of being a criminal. Due process isn't something that just like happens to ensure you're following the law. It's not what the term means.
Yeah. Well, actually, they were getting like due process when it comes to like their asylum hearings when they came in.
It's something you don't want them to get.
It was just like a long wait to get those asylum hearings. But you don't want to fund the measures to like increase that way or decrease that way and make things run better. You don't want to fund NGOs. You just want to fund Hitler's sons.
Or conservatives will post like a white woman and they'll be like, she didn't get due process when an immigrant killed her, and it's like it's not what due process means. I don't get due process against Gage if he commits a crime to me. I get due process in a courtroom. Exactly.
I get the due process.
Exactly, because the government is
accusing, they're charging me with something.
Exactly.
So I'm like, I didn't do it because I didn't.
Because he didn't, of course.
Because I didn't.
Because I'm making it up.
And this also just ignores the fact that the Supreme Court said in plain language that they are allowing you to deport people under other meanings, just not the Alien Enemies Act. When you're the government, you kind of got to play by the government rules.
Yeah.
Just straight up.
Trump being a little bit dramatic, maybe. If you could believe such a thing.
If you could believe it. Trump over-exaggerating, he could never.
No way. He could never. Take it back.
Man, well, that's Medicaid. That's SCOTUS.
Yeah, it sure is.
I guess that brings us to one extra that I have for you all today. I thought this one was quite the banger. I'm not going to read the tweets. I'm just going to kind of summarize what happened. Basically, Walmart made a statement saying that we are going to increase prices due to Trump's tariffs. And Trump was not very happy about that. He got on Truth Social and said, we're doing Walmart price controls. And then we had
communism, brother.
And then we had the most disingenuous discourse play out on Twitter, where I guess like neocons or centrist Republicans were getting on there and saying, "Wow, look, Trump and Bernie Sanders are the same. Look at that! How dare he come at this great American like institute with price controls on this thing?" And it's like, I don't even know how to combat it. I was just talking about how I'm an ideologue. This transcends ideology. Everything that's going on.
I don't think it transcends ideology at all. This is just fascism, right? Like
that's true.
Fascists,
that's true.
Fascists are pro-corporation when the corporation does what they want. When the corporation does what they want, they're anti some corporations when the corporation is not acting in alignment with the desired political program.
Yeah,
Trump. It's just like an authoritarian move. Whereas
it's
the
socialist
or the communist, dare I say, will have a more principled stance against the power that corporations wield in our society and the relationship of corporations between the people and the consumer and the worker and so on. It's not communism. We've played into the rhetorical drift by calling it MAGA communism because I think it's funny.
It's very clearly ironic when we do it.
Yeah, but there are some people that legitimately believe that like price controls at all, always, or pushing back on corporations in any way must be communism.
That's so fucking insane, dude.
It's stupid.
And it's just like everything that's going on here is like, it's so funny that Trump wrote policy to say Walmart's prices are going up. That's effectively what the tariff situation is prices where consumers are going up, and then is getting mad when prices go up and saying, oh, I'm going to force you to do it, and then employing like faux left-wing arguments. He's trying to say, Walmart makes billions of dollars in profit. Surely they can eat some of this. And it's like, that's kind of the argument that I'm making, but also you're the guy who put in the policy to make them do this. It kind of, in a way, is aligned with when we were talking about how conservatives were saying that liberals want immigrants here for slave labor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, it's just that I recognize the situation at hand, that a lot of immigrants come here and they do work underpaid, often under the table, don't receive the benefits that other people get. And it's like they're sharecropping. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I understand that economic reality. I understand that props up industry. You're just trying to get rid of them to do evil.
Yeah.
And I'm highlighting the practical effects of you getting rid of them.
To be clear, when we say Walmart makes billions in profits, like the Waltons could afford to take a pay cut to say pay their workers more or make it so their workers don't have to benefit from like welfare, for example. So the taxpayer is not subsidizing the low wages they make. That's an economic argument that you can work out mathematically. I don't think there is any corporation that can handle like a 100% tariff on China. I don't even think that Walmart could eat the tariffs.
It's also, I don't think they could either. Yeah. It's like Walmart makes billions because of their scale.
Mm-hmm.
Like Walmart operates at a massive fucking scale. It's one of like the biggest companies in the fucking world or some shit. But it's like when we get out there and critique the billions of dollars that Walmart pulls in, it's because we think they should pay their employees more, and they shouldn't do what Bernie Sanders used to say all the time, where it's like a lot of Walmart employees don't intentionally aren't allowed to work full-time hours, so that they can't get benefits. They don't have to give them benefits, and then they rely on government assistance like Medicaid, SNAP, other programs like that to get by. The government subsidizes Walmart's wages. I criticize their profits in the context of that and how more of those profits should go to the people who make Walmart run.
Yes.
He's criticizing Walmart's profits in that they're not eating something that's impossible for them to eat or operate with in this current capitalist system.
And it's going to make me look bad.
And it's going to make me look bad.
It's completely just like personal motivation.
It's just loyalty. If you're loyal to me, I'll do something good for you. Mm-hmm. If you're not loyal to me, I will do very bad to you.
It is telling that he thinks that Walmart announcing these price increases due to the tariffs looks bad for him, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of the time, like even, corporations, interest groups, whatever, they'll call out Trump for doing something and he just says like, no, you're lying. But here explicitly, he seems panicked about the reality that things will cost more because of him.
But it's just like, what did he expect?
I don't know. I guess he expected them to fall in line. I think the tariffs are an attempt to coerce business interests to fall in line behind him.
I feel like he was extra mad that I think the announcement came out after the 30% tariffs were announced. So the tariffs went down from 145 to 30%, but it's like they still imported things on the 145.
Still a tax on imports.
They're still seeing a massive increase in the tariff that they were paying on goods from China beforehand that they most likely can't eat. Margins aren't to the tune of 30% usually, I feel like.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. They can't eat it. Like, you can't expect a corporation to eat that. I am anti-corporation. Like, I would be in favor of completely redistributing the wealth that Walmart makes, nationalizing the service, again, in the interest of the general will. You know what I mean?
Grocery store.
Exactly. You can make an argument for that. That's not what the tariffs do. No. The tariffs just raise prices. And mathematically, I don't think it's possible for any corporation to eat the sum total of the tariffs that they would be hit with. And if they just buy American products, maybe don't exist in some cases, but even those that they can switch to American manufacturers, they cost more to produce because the cost of labor is higher.
Yeah.
So again, it's just like the purpose of tariffs is to raise prices. That's what they do.
There's nothing consistent about anything that has been done during the Trump administration except for their attempts to brutalize immigrants. Like that's it. This whole tariff saga has been just the biggest mind fuck. I swear to God, there's something new that comes out about it every time we get on here to record this show that twists the narrative in another direction. And it's just like, man,
it's Schrodinger's tariff.
Schrodinger's tariff, truly. What happened to tariffs are going to cover the revenue from all the tax cuts? Mm-hmm. What happened to that?
Yeah. We're supposed to take in like $1 trillion in tariffs or something like that.
Yeah. We're taking $2 trillion of tariffs, and that's going to pay your Social Security. Social Security is not going to be funded through tariffs.
They were talking about getting rid of personal income tax and just using tariffs instead.
Oh my God.
Obviously, that was never going to happen. There's no goddamn way that they would get rid of personal. The government would collapse. Trump wouldn't be able to do anything. They wouldn't be able to deport people, and that's a problem for Donald Trump. That was never going to happen. But there's been so many narratives about these tariffs. It's hard to keep up with.
Yeah.
So
it's been a time, folks. It's gonna keep being a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's politics.
That's politics. That's podcast.
Let us know if you've seen price increases and what you're doing about it and who you blame.
True.
Importantly, who you blame in this system, because it's bad out here.
It's bad out here, and it's all Trump's fault.
But I think that brings us to the end of this beautiful, beautiful episode on this beautiful Monday.
Beautiful,
in late
wonderful
May.
Monday. Come get the mandate. These people did.
And I think that we should give our special thanks.
I think we should celebrate them.
Absolutely.
So we got to celebrate this special group of people, starting with Caden Kraut, Lord Tyler the Radiant, Chris the Boastman, Christy Beck, Dylan B, Mike Chaplinsky, Omar Zuno, Clayton the Feg, Mark Yeager, Caleb Joy, Rich Toro, Tari Fergalaki, Max Vesquez, Jacob Rogers, Colton Booberry, Fixer Punk, Jim Egbers, Jeff Muzzy, Big Burrito, Cincy Alex, Joe Stenstrom, Adrian Sandoval, Chloe Sam 601, Colleen Cutsford, Yook, Jennifer DeVoe, Big Bird Titty, Crawfish, and Benneth Bennington III, Alexia Benanti, Nietzsche, Big Booty Beatdown, Sam Maloney, Two-Headed Boy, Ben Shapiro's Boyfriend, Ted Cruz's Boy Toy, Dictator Jace, Luke O'Shea, Cucker Tarleson, Danielle Jackson, The Word of Microsoft, Jennifer Signs, Aaron Edmonds, Gundams, Darth Father, Taylor Fercante, Corey Chambers, Ellie N, Devin Hatchard, Retro Mondo, Em the Doot Slayer, Veronica aka V, Raxon, Ass Smith, The Growler, Flower Clown, Beetlebugs, Murder in a Trench Coat, Lonnie Rogers, Slavic and Sappy, Casey Lynn Kelly, Snake Eyes, In Hope of Giants, AK Gon, Zach Lantian, Info Russell, Austin Greif, Marcus Corbett, Caleb Roper, Taylor Rensock, Camby, Tylen Freeman, Tay, Isaac Hodges, Madeline C, Kayla Lowe, Anna Valinic, KCC, Say Yes to Wes,
August, Particular Pikmin, Sir Capalot, Jeff Signs, Howard the Duck, Brennan is Egg, JR, Froggy Gumdrop, Jackie Boy, Shameless, Coherent Babbles, MJ Sharp, Michaela Muncie, The Walls 3000, Jared Finch, Tactical Snowflake, Son of Ander, Vanilla Bryce, Chris T, Kashan Lala, Amanda R, Hanky Panky, Tyler J, Damian Blues, Ashley White, Particulon, Memfrez, Lauren, Uncrestmatic Boar, Sasquatch, Rhonda Stiletto, Midwest Marxist, Joe the Mailman, Gary from West Michigan, Shawnee GG, Juniper Not Jupiter, Stacked Crabs, I Crowley, Urban Peach, Lord of Forlorn, Holt Forsyth, Kevin Kasaya, Booty Snakes, Erica, Krusty Crab, Dew Fairy, Triceratops, Austin Lima, Lane Waltz, Azim Fidah Hussein, Gorgeous Girl Mukes, Brooklyn G, Noverk the Dastardly, Goldthorn, Addie Book, Merlin, John from Houston, Anaya, Cryobongi, Sergeant Poogie, Connor Nix, Jordan T, Hoodie, Kim Kitsuragi, Rose Grimm, Kristen, Jamie the Young Extremist, Jack the Heathen, Archer W, Evan Mingo, AJ Torres, Elo Nico, Jake Hall, Seth Schmidt, Daniel Stock, Noah Sajas, Majo What, Ultra the Dragon, Mercy Boku, Dick Cheney and 6 Inch Heels, Luke Wechter, Henry Kraggles, Tristan Ringsmith, Yaya, Hannah Attig, Asura the Atheist, and my mom. Thank you all so much for supporting the show on Patreon. If your name's supposed to be on that list and it's not, it's your duty. To do. It's your patriotic duty.
It's morally imperative of you.
Patriotic duty.
Hey, yo.
To let us know so that we can add you to the list. And if you want, early access to all of this content and you don't have it yet,
which is pretty good. I mean, some of this information may be irrelevant by Wednesday. Who knows? Maybe SCOTUS disbands.
Maybe all of it. Maybe we get hit with a fucking meteor.
Maybe Trump dissolves like SCOTUS and the Senate.
That'd be crazy.
And then it's just him.
Martial law?
Martial law.
The Enabling Act, but American?
Oh, that could be pretty good.
That would be pretty bad.
We could go back to English common law, much like the Solicitor General was arguing in the Supreme Court.
That's true.
He invoked English common law. I think in Ketanji Brown Jackson was like, okay, but like Trump's not the king.
Yeah. When are we getting Magna Carta 2? You know what I mean? When's Habeas Corpus 2 coming out?
That'd be kind of gas.
I need that. But until that happens,
we'll be right here talking about the news. Have a good first half of your week.